I'm Jason Mowbray, and this is Rod Thiessen, and we are from the world-famous Getaway RV. And we are here to talk to you about van conversions. We do all kinds of custom vans and the power equipment that we put in it in order to help you choose what is best for you and for your needs.
That's right. And today we've done a bit of a setup here. Actually, it wasn't just today. We've spent some time setting this up. So we have all the appliances here on the one side, and we have power equipment on the other. And what we want to do is we want to organize this for you so you can see what's available, what's on the market, and we're going to show you how we will set you up with the right equipment in your van.
So you've made the right step first off. You've called us, the professionals. So we are going to go through a PowerPoint that we've put together, and we're going to go through a series of questions that we normally ask customers that come into us.
Yeah, so we've got a couple points here. First point is where to begin when choosing your equipment. So obviously, here we are. How the equipment is dependent on the 12-volt battery is one point we want to make. And a visual demonstration to help you remember. We're going to do that for you. And we want to go through a series of questions. So as if you were a customer that we came in with a van, and we were going to ask you a series of questions, and then we're going to give you the answers and tell you why we made the recommendations that we did.
All right.
Okay.
So the internet's full of information, and it can be very, very confusing. So, you know, as Rod said, you come on into us, and we're going to ask you many things. The type of camping you do. So a lot of people go to campgrounds where they're always plugged into power. There's other people that they want to go way out in the boonies. They've got no power hookups at all. And then there's people that have the combination of both. Part of the time they're dry camping, and part of the time they're plugged into power. So, you know, we've got all kinds of different options for those aspects.
Right. And like you mentioned, like equipment is complicated as well. So we have refrigerators that work on three-way. We have heaters that work with more than one power source. We have equipment that will have diesel or propane as a primary source of energy, but they also need 12 volt to operate as well. So we want to sort of sort that all out for you. And like Jason says, find out what you do, what kind of camping you do, and then we're going to recommend the right products for you.
All right, next slide.
Okay. So one thing, you want to make sure that you come into a reliable place. When you get information, there's, like I say, there's lots of information on the internet. So you want to get information from somebody that can offer you all the options. So if there's somebody that is not used to providing, let's say, for example, propane equipment, you want to go to somebody that works with propane, diesel, and gas. And at Getaway, we do everything. We work with everything, and we're certified. So,
all right, what do we got next?
Okay. Let's just check here.
So let's pretend that you came in to us and you've got your van. So one of the first things I'll do is I'll come outside with you, take a look at the van, figure out what kind of floor plan that you want, and then from there, as I said, we're going to ask you what kind of camping you like to do. So one of the majority of fuel systems that we use is propane, and I do get a lot of people that say, you know what, I don't want to use propane in my van, and the very first question that I'm going to ask you is why not? And a lot of people are just, for whatever reason, they've got a concern that propane is somehow dangerous. We've been using propane systems in RVs and vans for decades, and it is one of the safest fuel sources around. The beauty of propane as well is you're not using a lot of power. So you can go to a campsite out in the wilderness, you can cook with it, you can use it as a fuel source for your furnace. And I've had customers that have, we've done a conversion for, they've gone all the way across Canada, spent the entire summer, and come back and they've still got propane in the system. So as I said, it's a very good fuel source to use.
It is, you're right. And so one thing about that I'd like to do is let's go through this series of questions here. Let's just say you came in and you had a camper van, and I would ask you some of these questions about what type of equipment do you see yourself using? And so we have a list here. Would you see yourself using a cooktop? That's
Yeah,
something we
so
would ask.
we've got a propane cooktop here. It's a European style cooktop.
Another question I'd ask you, Jason, is do you want heat in the van? Because not everybody has the same needs. Some people, we've had people that have come to us. They've had a getaway van, and we're building another one for them, and they'll say, you know what? Don't put a furnace in because we never used our furnace. So other people, they go skiing, they use the furnace all the time. So it'll depend on what your answers are to all the questions. Is how we equip your van. So heater is one question. What about hot water? Some people want hot water for a shower. Some people don't care about hot water. So do you want a cooktop? Do you want a heater? Do you want a hot water? Do you want a refrigerator? Do you want air conditioning? What about lights and accessories? Probably yes. So anyway, those are the questions that we'd ask you. Those are some of the questions that we'd ask you. Some of the other questions would be, where are you going to use the van? So another one would be, are you going to be strictly off the grid? Are you going to be off the grid, or are you going to be where you can plug the van in, or is it going to be a combination of the both of them? So we need to know that, because that has a big bearing on what we choose for you as far as equipment goes. Some people use their vans for work vans, and they travel, they are able to plug in, so that's sort of another type of use, and we need to know that stuff so we can make the right recommendations. A couple more questions. How long will you be staying at each campsite location, or each location? What kind of time frame? Will you be using the van for day trips, weekends, or a week at a time? So some other questions. Is your van gas or diesel? Because if you have a diesel tank, that gives us other choices for equipment. What size is the van? If it's a big van, we'll have a little more room for some of the equipment in there. If it's a more compact van, that also affects the choices that we have for equipment. Venting, just space alone. And what are your expectations for the van, outside of the van? What do you want it to look like? Do you want it to look like a SWAT van, or do you want it to look like something really stealth, or you don't want it to look like an RV at all? So we throw that into the equation as well. And then finally, on a scale from 1 to 10, what's the serviceability you expect from the equipment? In other words, if there is a problem with the equipment, how easy is it to have it serviced? So anyway, yeah, so there's a whole lot of questions, actually, isn't there, when people come in for vans? There's a lot of stuff that we want to find out about you first before we actually start making recommendations. So,
well, we could start by maybe just walking through some of the appliances that we have here.
Sure. Sorry, can we just say that you're the customer here, and you've chosen the van? And this is the van you've chosen. It's a 144.
144 Sprinter van, 4x4.
4x4.
I want to have a cooktop.
Yeah.
And when I get up in the morning, I don't want to be cold. I want to be warm.
Okay. So you want a furnace?
I want hot water too.
Okay.
And when I go swimming in the lake and I come out freezing cold, I want to be able to warm up afterwards.
You don't swim?
I polar bear swim.
Okay. Okay. Anything else you want?
I want to have a small fridge.
Okay.
In there.
Okay. What about air conditioner?
You know, for me, I think the places that I'm going, I'm not going to be plugged in a lot, so I think I would skip the air conditioning.
Right. Okay.
But I definitely would want some 12-volt outlets, some USB outlets, probably some kind of a ceiling fan.
Okay.
And
so, where are you going to be using the van? Is it going to be off-road?
For me,
off-grid?
I may be plugged in 10% of the time. The rest of the time, I want to be out somewhere where there's no people.
Okay. Will you be able to plug the van in once in a while?
I could plug it in once in a while.
Okay. So, and as far as the outside of the van, what do you want it to look like?
You know, I think I want it to look cool.
Okay.
So probably some cool rubber on there, some rims, maybe a custom ladder with a roof rack.
Okay.
And definitely some solar panels so I can use it off grid.
So you're concerned you want it to make it look, you want it to look sharp on the outside.
I want it to look sharp on the outside.
Okay. And floor plan, is it the typical one where you would have some storage room in the back with like a toy hauler, that sort of thing, or?
You know, I think I'd like to have a raised bed in the back because I like to mountain bike periodically.
Okay.
So I'm going to be able to throw some bikes in the back as well, kind of a multi-use.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so anyway, I'm going by our point by point here. So you've told me your appliances that you want, and you told me that you want to be off-grid. So there's one thing that I want to sort of impress, and you already know this, of course, because you're not really a customer, but is that one thing that's really important is the 12-volt battery. Would you agree with that?
I would agree that the 12-volt is the heart of the vehicle.
Exactly. So what we want to do, first of all, before we start giving you the appliance answers, we want to go through the appliances that we have here and show you what kind of a draw they have on the 12-volt battery system. So I guess what we've done is we've figured out the amperage draw at 12 volts. So some of the appliances that we're going to show you are actually 120 volts, and we've reduced that so we can make a good comparison to the other 12-volt items. And we want to show you some of the other equipment that operates with where they need 12 volt just to operate some of the fans and the computers on them too. So let's just go through that.
So we'll go through some of this stuff.
Right.
Here.
Of course, this one here. You can tell us about that one, Jason.
So we've got our European style 2-burner propane stovetop, and for me, being the person that's dry camping, this would be the way I'd want to go, because when you're turning it on, there's no power draw on the system. Versus over here, we've got a Furion induction cooktop, and they're great. They heat up really, really fast, but these are more designed where you're going to be plugged into power. They do have a really high amp draw, so if we're rating it on a 12-volt system, it's about 150 amp draw, which is quite high, and it is going to bring the batteries down very quickly.
Right. So, for example, a light like this LED, let's just take this light here. How much this would draw what? 2 amps of power?
Yeah, on your regular bulb, about a 2 amp draw.
So this one in comparison, 150 amps.
Yes.
Just to give you an idea of the difference. That's something very low draw. This is something probably very high draw.
Yeah.
You say?
Yeah, and if you're looking at your battery bank itself,
right.
For 2 6-volt batteries, that's 224 amp hours.
Right.
And that's your capacity while you're off grid. So you want to keep your draws as minimal as possible. So when we're outfitting a van, we're not even looking at these style of lights. We're looking at LED lights where you have a 0.4 amp draw, and the amp draw rating is based per hour as well. So if you see something and it says 0.4 amp, that's per 0.4 amp per hour that it's drawing out of the battery system. So we do look at the battery banks quite a bit, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more coming up.
Yeah.
So some of the other appliances here that we have.
Let's go around the corner here and see this fan here. This is a fantastic fan. So there we've got our amperage draw on that. It's 5 amps draw. We've got our water pump here, and the water pump is from 3 to 7 amps draw. Of course, when it starts to labor and it's pumped coming to the end of its cycle, it's going to draw more. So it's a variable between 3 and 7 amps. This is a hydronic heater system. So this will heat from diesel. It'll heat your water and the air. And it has a series of equipment here. So there's a pump here. It draws 3 amps. There's the burner assembly. It also requires 12 volt to operate, and that's another 3 amps. And then there's a fan, depending on how many of these you put in your system. So this fan, that's another amp for the fan. So even though it's diesel, you have to keep in mind that it's drawing 12 volt power as well. And if you lose the 12 volt power, you know what happens. Everything stops. So that's why we have this little emphasis on the battery itself, because if the battery draws down, your equipment, even though it's diesel or sometimes propane or whatever, it won't work. You have to have the battery. The battery is definitely the weak link in the RV system or your camper van system. So moving along here, we've got a microwave. Take a guess. It's going to be a fairly heavy draw too. It's 75 amps at 12 volts. Even though it's a 110 volt appliance, it'll run through an inverter and operate off the batteries, but it'll tax the batteries quite a bit at 75 amps. Here's a propane furnace. Runs on propane, of course, gets all of its heat from the propane, but requires 12 volt for the circuit board and for the fan, and that's 2.7 amps. And a lot of these, we've had our technician come out and he's actually tested the draw on these, so we know this is pretty accurate. Even though there is variables, some of these are just, we've actually tested them. This is an S-bar heater, which is a diesel heater. You've seen those. That is a 3 amp draw. So here we've got a hot water heater. That has a circuit board in it as well. Also requires about 1 amp of electricity draw. Okay, so also other appliances here. Jason, tell me about the draw on this fridge, or tell me how, it's a 3-way fridge. What does that mean?
Okay, so a 3-way fridge runs on propane, it runs on 110 volts, and it runs on 12 volts. So if you are plugged in at a campsite, for example, you could run it on 110 volts. The 12 volt is for when you're actually driving down the road. So what you'd want to do though is you'd want to have the fridge pre-cool before you start out on your journey on either propane or electric, and then switch it over to 12 volt just for the traveling portion, and then as soon as you do stop, shut it off of 12 volts and then put it onto a different fuel source, otherwise it will drain your battery down very fast. As far as the propane side of it, if you're dry camping, there's no power hookups, there's no 110, you would run it on propane.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
About, is it true that they say that they need vents on a propane fridge, or is...
Yes, so
okay.
With this type of fridge, on the outside of the van, we would actually have to cut a hole in the outside of the van in order to install it for ventilation and for serviceability. So that's kind of where we get into this fridge here, which is a NovaCool, and we're proud to say it's actually made in Vancouver, so a local company supporting a local company.
Can I ask you a question? So this fridge here, as far as the 12 volt, we're talking about the battery, how it affects these fridges. 12 volt on this fridge would be, is that really 18 amps?
That is an 18 amp draw.
So
yes.
This is not ideal for a 12 volt operation.
No.
If you have the vents, if you can't put the vents in, then this is probably not a good fridge for you then, right? It's not going to happen.
Well, for me, in the van application, to me this is the next generation. I don't even normally talk to people about the propane fridge in a van unless they're really pushing for it.
A lot of people don't want the vents on the outside.
Exactly.
Mercedes or ProMaster, they like to keep it a little cleaner on the outside, right? So then we move on to a high efficiency fridge.
Exactly.
And this one would draw what? What do we got here?
So the NovaCool on this particular model here, it's a 2.5 amp draw. But the beauty of that is it's a high efficiency fridge, and that 2.5 amp draw is only when the fridge is actually cooling. So once it's actually cooled down and reached its temperature, it will shut off, and then there's no draw on the fridge until it needs to finally kick back on once it's warmed up a little bit inside the fridge.
Nice, nice. So now that we've talked about sort of the basic draw of a lot of these appliances and how they need 12 volt, should we go over to the charging system to see how we can charge the battery?
Yeah, exactly.
We got a little setup here. So let's start from this side here. Jason, tell me about solar panels. You've sold so many solar panels in your lifetime,
yeah.
and you know lots about them. So
I have,
how much draw no, sorry, this is not draw. How much output would this solar panel
So
give
this
you?
is a 170 watt panel.
Yeah.
It's a Go Power panel. Again, a local company supporting a local company. Go Power is in Victoria on Vancouver Island. So we have a really good relationship with them. And as far as serviceability, I've got them on speed dial if I ever need to ask them any technical questions. So as far as the output on this panel, the maximum output is going to be 8.8 amps, and that's going to be, you know, based on the sunlight. So if it's cloudy, you're not quite going to get that much power in it coming from it. But
That would be like in a perfect world.
yeah, that's going to be at
Okay.
a perfect world. Yes.
Okay. So I guess we should tell everybody what we have set up here too. Is we've got all the charging systems that they have available. Basically, we have solar, and we're going to move on. We're going to talk about the alternator in your vehicle also charges. The power converter charges. The power inverter has a charger. And what we've done is we've simulated charge with water. So we're going to pretend that this is your battery, and this is the power that goes into the battery, because really that's a good way to think of power, isn't it? All it is consuming a certain
Kind of
amount.
like a gas tank.
It's like a gas tank, exactly, yeah. So for solar, can we try this and see if anything comes of it? So for solar charge, let's put a trickle in here, because let's say it's a cloudy day. We're trickling in a little bit of energy into the battery. So depends how much energy you take out, but if it's sunny out, it's trickling in, is it not?
It's always trickling in when it's sunny out.
What happens at
Even
night?
on a cloudy day, it's trickling in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What happens at nighttime?
So at nighttime, it
shuts off.
It shuts off.
So, but the nice thing about solar is it keeps on charging. When you're away from the van or whatever, it's always putting energy into the battery, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So next thing we want to talk about is the alternator. Does the alternator give you a charge?
So the alternator will give you a charge when you're driving. So you got to keep in mind when we've measured the output of the alternator, it does vary quite a bit. We've measured it anywhere from 3 amps to about 40 amps, and it just really depends on the system, the vehicle.
So this one here was it was a 2018 GMC half ton, and
we had a 10 amp output
10 amps,
from
10
the
amp,
alternator
right.
going to the battery. So
Right.
so I guess we could turn that on there and
careful, don't get me wet.
there you go.
10 amps. Pretty good charge.
Pretty good charge there.
Yeah. Okay, what next? So
the
we've got the
power
power
converter.
converter.
So that would be if you're plugged into shore power.
Okay, so you have to be plugged
The
in.
van has to be plugged
Otherwise
in
it
for
doesn't
that
give
to
you a
work.
charge at
Otherwise
all.
it's doing absolutely nothing
Right,
as far
okay,
as giving you power to your batteries.
Yeah.
So the other thing too is this is a 30 amp output. You got to keep in mind too, anything that you have running inside of the van. So say you have something on that's drawing 1 amps. So now this is only putting 29 amps into the battery. If you had 2 amp draw on the system, you're running a few lights inside, it's only putting 28 amps in. So that does reduce the
Right.
more power consumption you're using at the time,
But
but it's
pretty-
still a good charge
It's a
system.
pretty good charge, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see if this stays in the battery here. So there you go. You're plugged in and now you got charge.
Yeah.
Right? What about this one? This is a power inverter, so that's kind of confusing. It's an inverter, but this one also has a charger built
Yeah,
into it?
there's different styles of inverters. This right now is definitely my inverter of choice. It's the Go Power IC2000, so 2000 watt pure sine wave inverter. So when that's operating, it's a very clean source of power. It's just like being plugged in at home. So if you're dry camping and there is nowhere to plug in, then what the inverter does is it'll take power from your batteries and it'll give you 110 power. But this has also got a built-in 100 amp battery charger in there.
Right, so that 100 amp, that's huge.
That is very.
So you plug your unit in, and this thing's charging up your batteries
it's
fast.
it's a very fast. So that one's coming in.
Coming in a lot. So that's
Coming in a lot.
It's
Yes.
really filling it up.
Yeah.
So that's a great way to look at it, isn't it? You're filling up that tank.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's your fuel tank. There's all the power
That's
loads
right.
going in.
Okay, so we got solar, which keeps on trickling. We got the alternator for when obviously only when you're driving the vehicle or when the vehicle's running. We got your power converters, so that's only when you're plugged in, right? And the inverter, if you happen to have an inverter with this big charger on it, that's of course when you're plugged in as well, but it gives you a big charge, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so anything else that charges?
Some people, if they do want to have an air conditioner and they don't have the ability to plug into power, then we also have Yamaha generators as well.
Right.
So there's various combinations of the Yamahas that you use to run an air conditioner.
Yeah, although on a small van, would you say that it's not really common, is it?
That's really not common.
They take quite a bit of space.
Yeah.
You always have to have fuel packing, and if you do set them outside, you really have to keep an eye on them.
For me, I wouldn't use it, but some people do.
That's right. Okay.
All right, so now we're going to do the opposite, and we're going to show you some of the draws. So we'll start with the LED light here, which has a 0.4 amp draw, so very, very minimal.
Okay, so just to be clear, what we did is we did show how much energy was going into the battery, right?
Now we're going to show what's coming out.
What's coming out, okay.
All right.
That's how much draw is that?
Tiny little bit.
Okay, we'll see if we can get it right.
Oh, that's too much. Too much.
Okay, so it's a real low draw.
Yeah.
Even
probably
lower.
a drip.
Just a drip.
That's a drip. Okay,
it's just
perfect.
dripping. Okay, so
All right.
what about that water pump?
Okay, water pump is a 3 to a 7 amp draw.
3 to 7. So when it's operating, when it's working, 7 amps.
Yeah.
Let's just say about like that.
Yeah.
Would you
exactly.
guess? At a guess?
And
Okay.
with the pump, you turn it on, you use it.
You don't
you
use
shut
it all the
off.
time,
It's not
right?
being operated all the time.
Exactly.
So
What about? Can you grab that furnace?
Yeah, for sure.
So the furnace
this
is
is
how
our-
many amps?
Our Suburban furnace.
Again,
and it's a 2.7 amp draw.
2.7. Okay. So it's not too bad. And that would be when the furnace is operating, right?
Yeah. So once it's reached temperature and the fan shut off,
okay,
there's no draw in the system.
So that's a
there.
propane furnace.
Yes.
What about that diesel heater? That has a few components on it. You don't have to bring it out here, but what would the total? It would be probably about what?
So you're looking
5?
at about with everything running, you've 6.
About 6 amps.
5 to 7
Okay,
amps.
okay, 5 to 7 amps for the diesel heater. So let's just say maybe like that. A little bit more. How's that? You get that on the? Can you see that? Okay. So, okay, let's go for something bigger. What draws a lot of power? Would you say?
So anything with an element draws a lot of power.
Right. Heat.
So heat. So
Right.
a toaster, a hair dryer,
Right.
Coffee maker.
You're talking
anything
about
like
something that runs on electricity, probably
Correct.
110 volt.
Yes, and you're running that through your inverter.
So that has to go through the inverter.
Yeah.
So that induction range there, what would that draw?
Okay, so this is going to be a large draw. You're at 12 volts. You're 150 amps.
So 150 amps. So
You crank that wide open.
there.
That's
going to drain your battery pretty fast, right? So for that, ideally, you want to be plugged in. You want to have the van plugged
Exactly.
into a shore power
Yeah.
or a plug-in.
So if you're a big dry camper, propane
Right.
is going to be the way to go.
Right.
For
There's
this.
a big advantage there.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. What about something on that, like an air conditioner? Is that possible?
Off inverter and air conditioner is not possible. I mean,
Right.
theoretically,
Yeah.
if you had a big enough battery bank, but
Right.
you're not going to be able to fit enough batteries in an RV.
Then
to do
again,
that.
so you told me you had a sort of a smaller van, so
Yeah, a fan is going to work for me. So,
Right.
we're out camping and we want to try and keep things cool. Then we've got the Max Air and the Fantastic fans.
5 amps.
And they're about a 5 amp draw.
So, not bad.
Yeah,
Not bad. Pretty
Yeah.
good when you're using it. So going back to that air conditioner then, like, if you had a bigger van, you could have a room. You'd be room for a bigger battery bank, right? If you really wanted to go, or an induction cooktop. If you really wanted that, if you had a bigger van, I might say, okay, your van is big. We can put a big battery bank in there.
It's going to be the battery bank would certainly run the induction cooktop
But
through the inverter.
But you also need an inverter too.
Exactly.
Which takes up space again?
The inverter does take up space, but the
Right.
beauty of this inverter is
Yeah.
it's got the built-in charger and a built-in transfer switch,
Right.
so it's actually quite compact for an inverter.
Right, right. Okay. So now that we know the draw and how much input, how much output, that sort of thing, obviously we can put more batteries in, like we said.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
what are the types of batteries that we can use in a camper van?
All right, well, we'll talk about some of the batteries.
So Jason, we've talked about how to charge a battery. We've talked about the appliances that draw from the battery. So we kind of have a good idea of how much draw and how much input is from all the different equipment. So what else can we do? Can we do something about the battery itself? Can we get more batteries? Can we get better batteries?
Yeah, for sure. So standard batteries, you're going to find a regular 12-volt style battery in a wet cell. You're also going to find the 6-volt batteries also in a wet cell. In a van application though, we really like to go with the AGMs. If you're using a wet cell battery, they have to be sealed and vented from the living area. Whereas the AGM batteries, they can pretty well be installed anywhere in the van. They don't need to be vented to the outside. They don't need to be sealed from anything because they're already sealed. So if you have a van and you are plugged into power the majority of the time, you could use a 12-volt battery. So this battery here is 75 amp hours, but most van applications, I find people want to go off-grid. And what we do then is we would go with the AGM 6-volt batteries. So together this makes a 220 amp hour system. With the 6-volt batteries, there is some variation on the amp hours, just depending on the style of battery there.
So Jason, is there a limit to how many batteries you can put in a van, or can you tie them all together?
You can tie them all together.
Right.
So these are 6 volts. So if you were tying these together, you would actually wire them in series, which would make a 12-volt system. Now, I've had many customers where we've put 4 AGM batteries in. So we'd have 2 batteries wired in series. We'd have 2 other batteries wired in series to make 2 separate 12-volt systems. And then we would actually parallel the system together. So we're always maintaining a 12-volt system.
I guess a lot of it comes down to space. So a smaller van, you are kind of limited to how many batteries you can put in because you're using up space you could use for other things. But if the van's a little bigger, you could obviously put a bigger bank in, and then that would give you a few more choices for equipment maybe.
Exactly, but you'd be surprised at what I can do with space.
Right. I bet.
All right. I'm bleeding here, so...
Okay, Jason, hey, what happened to you?
You know, I've got blood, sweat, and tears into this place.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know.
I'll bet you do. So we've talked about all the batteries. Did you forget anything? Is there any other batteries you can want to mention? I think you did.
You know, some people ask about lithium batteries, and you know, right now it's not something we've been big on. It's something that we're kind of exploring with people a little bit. We did have one customer who that was the only style of battery that he could have. So we did order some in for him, and
we want to make sure that whatever we put in, we kind of know about and we've tested it, right?
Exactly. And so far we haven't tested lithium batteries, but you know, as I said, we will get the odd person that are insisting on them. We can get them. They are pricey.
I think we've got something good coming up with them though, don't we?
Exactly. Yeah, there is some coming out, and
Yeah.
well, that'll be the next video. We'll talk about our surprise.
Okay, so Jason, earlier we were going through a scenario about a camper van that you were going to build for yourself.
Yes.
And we've gone through all the appliances, so we know a little bit more about the battery, right? And how it affects everything.
Exactly.
So let's get you some answers to what type of equipment we would recommend based on what you told me, right?
All right.
Okay, so for the cooktop.
For the cooktop, I'm going with this.
Okay, right on. So for the cooktop, we're going to go with the propane cooktop. And we're doing that because he doesn't have the van plugged in very often. He's off the grid, so we don't want to run out of battery power. So we're choosing the propane cooktop for the van.
Exactly.
So okay, so what about, you said you also wanted hot water because you...
I
what
do
you need
I
hot
do
water?
want hot water. I'm going to put an outside shower in the van, so
okay,
when I come
okay.
back from mountain biking, I
Okay.
can, or that swim in the cold lake, I
Right.
can rinse off.
Okay.
So here's
Okay,
my
so
propane water.
can I tell you why we recommended that? Because there's other options for hot water. You've already got the propane cooktop, right? Which means you have a propane tank in the van.
Exactly.
Correctly? So you have the propane tank, why not put the propane heater as well, water heater?
Exactly.
Correctly? Okay.
So just tell me, what about the propane tank? I don't want to be going to Canadian Tire and buying a big barbecue tank and cutting a hole in my van, or
this
or
tank,
what am I doing?
this tank tucks underneath the van nicely. You won't even see it. And it's about 25 pounds, and it's gonna last and last. Like propane is very efficient, it's gonna last a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. So next appliance. What about heat? Okay, so you also told me that the van is a 144 Sprinter, so it's kind of a compact van. So I could say put a propane furnace in as well, but because space is very important to you and you want a toy hauler in the back, we're going to recommend a diesel heater, an SPAR heater.
All right. I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah. And also you told me the van is diesel, so we can hook that right up to the diesel tank.
Exactly.
Right?
You know, I see online that a lot of people are putting these underneath the passenger seat. So where I want this is actually underneath the bench seat in the back, because I want to get a little more even heat flow throughout the van. If it's underneath the seat, I've got my entry door there, and I'm going to be losing heat.
Plus, we all know that seat is designed for safety, and you do not want to cut that seat base, do you?
I don't want any safety issues.
You're right. So okay, so now we've got those chosen. Now refrigerator. So
I'm buying local. I want an Overcool. I want a 12-volt fridge, high efficiency.
Okay. Obviously, we can't go to the propane fridge because there's venting regulations and requirements.
Yeah, I don't want to cut any
and you don't want to cut a hole in the side of the van. So we're going to go to the
van.
NovaCool refrigerator because it's high efficiency, right?
Exactly.
It's going to run a long time when you're camping off your batteries. Okay, so we got the refrigerator. Air conditioner. At first you were thinking about an air conditioner, I think, but we've kind of
I would love an air conditioner, but for the type of camping that I do, it's just not feasible.
Obviously, it's a small van. You'd have to have a massive battery bank just to run the air conditioner.
Exactly. So I'm going to go with two of the Fantastic fans.
Right.
Because with the Fantastic fans, you can get them where you've got airflow in and out.
Yeah.
So I would have two on there, one with the air coming in and one with the air going out, so I get a nice breeze.
So those will run off
circulation
your
coming
battery when you're dry camping, as opposed to an air conditioner, which is not going to work at all when you're dry, unless you have a big generator.
Unless I've got a generator.
It's not going to work for your small van at all.
Yeah.
That's way more efficient. Probably not quite as cold as an air conditioner, but definitely gets the air moving.
Gets the air circulating.
Right.
That's all I need.
Right. And obviously lights and accessories. We're going to hook you up with lights. We're going to put
Going
LED
with
lights
the
in.
LEDs throughout.
Right.
Yeah, and there's different styles you can get. So if this isn't your cup of tea as far as style, there's the
You
round,
get the nice little bullet reading lights.
Exactly.
Make the van look really funky inside. Okay. So you can see that we asked you what type of van you had, all the little questions about how you're going to use it, the type of fuel the van runs on, all those questions we put into the equation, and then we came up with a recipe of appliances that will work for you, right? And the van would have been longer. There's a lot of things that would have changed if you would have given me a different answer, isn't that right?
Exactly.
Right, so that's why I think it's great if you come in here and you tell us what you need.
Talk to the world famous guys at Getaway RV and we'll give you the answers.
That's right, and we'll figure out exactly what is the right equipment for you, right?
Yeah. Also in my van, I'm going with 4 of the 6-volt AGMs. I'm going with 240 watts of solar, so that would be 2 of the 170 watt panels. And of course, I'm definitely going with the IC Go Power inverter, because I do want to be able to have power off the grid and be able to use the odd 110 appliance if I need to.
Right. So you're going to be camping longer with all this stuff in there. The way it's set up, you're going to camp longer.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not going to have a dead battery, and then when everything stops, you're going to just keep going.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep on going.
Good. So if you're interested in any of this equipment, or you're interested in upfitting your van, you have to make sure you give us a call, Getaway RV in Abbotsford. Is that right?
Yeah, call the world famous Getaway RV in Abbotsford, 604-853-2229. And you can ask for Jason, you can ask for Rod. Either of us will be very happy to help you out, make your dream come true.